Oh, Ann M. Williams. There are a lot of memories. I think that probably how the town has grown since 1961, when I came down here as a permanent resident in 1967, and then I got into the real estate business right at that time. I worked with another real estate broker who was a native Cape Codder, member of the town of Barnstable, the part of the Drew and Otis family. And she predicted at that time there were just under 10,000 people. And she predicted at that time that the town of Barnstable would grow to 50,000 people by the turn of the century, that there would be 250,000 people on the Cape by the turn of the century, and that we would have approximately 450 to 500,000 people on the Cape any day in the summertime. And now it's what, 2014? I'm still alive, she isn't, but it all's come true. And now it's starting to drop down again and level off. And of course, people even then talked about all these extra summer people that were running around. I thought it was good because it was good for the business of the town, which we have to have good business. In those days, the villages closed up on October 15th. Very quiet, the villages. In fact, more like this winter has been in the villages. And then the traffic came back, the people came back April 19th, the big weekend. And so it has changed, I mean, the traffic. Those of us that have been here a long time know all the little back roads and how to miss the traffic. And which way would I come? I came the shore road today, so I could stop at the little post office and get my stamps and get in here in time. Well, I actually volunteered to serve on the original solid waste disposal committee because they were talking about putting a smokestack up on Cape Cod. And I lived where I lived in Dorchester, I could see the smokestack, and I said, oh no, no way. And so I served on that commission for 2 years, and I got to know people from all 15 towns on the Cape. It's very interesting, towns talking to each other. But we finished that work in 69 to 70. People said, when would we really get to looking at that? I said, well, I would hope we would start recycling and doing those things, and that we'd probably look at it. I think it's going to take till 1980 till we really look at that. I was called in 1990 when they revisited that plan and finally started to put it to work. But I did ask Jane Eshbaugh, which is a name out of the past, if she would take care of solid waste and that she would start recycling at the landfill. And she did, and her history is another part of our town. Well, it was after I did that I got tapped to sit on the finance committee. And that was in 1970, 71. And I served on the finance committee until I went to work for the hospital in 1977. I went to work in 1977 as we started to put the original new building on the hospital. And that's when we opened up the first part of the emergency room, and we have just completed the third or fourth building of the new emergency room, which is quite spectacular. Well, yes, it's grown, but you have to know that back in 1977, when I first went as Community Affairs in the Department of Community Affairs, we had 100, I'm going to say 8 or 9 hospitals in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the first thing they said was, we've got to close some of these hospitals. And we've been closing and merging hospitals ever since. And I think the fact that we actually ended up working with MGH and Partners was formed, it's all been good. It gives us more opportunity to talk to the teaching hospitals in the city and to have them working with us. And I think it's very good. Well, the emergency room, even back in the 70s and probably prior to that, was always the busiest emergency room in the Commonwealth in the summertime. We'd look at the statistics, and MGH and City Hospital, you name them, and we were still the largest. And that's still a strong statistic today, and which is why we have now gone into the next expansion of the emergency room, which is pretty spectacular. I started out as a member of the Barnstable Finance Subcommittee when we bought the land back probably in 70, 71, one of the first things. And we bought the land that Cape Cod Tech is on for $200,000. And I went to a meeting in Orleans, and the 15 towns were there, and the banker, August Viekman, said, we should buy this land now and pay for it, so it will not be on our final bond. And we did. I advanced from that to being chair of the Barnstable Finance Committee, and then we met as a group with all the finance committees, and I had the great privilege of being the chair of the consortium of finance committees that guided Cape Cod Tech through its first years. Actually, all the little high schools had little technical programs, and it was voted on by the towns that we would join as a group. This was the new way of doing vocational education, that there would be regional schools, and quite a few throughout the Commonwealth now, so that they can give a better education. And what many people do not realize is that their academic education is as important as their vocational education, and that we do very well with the MCAS tests. Our children, students, are responsible for the MCAS. And I think there was only 1 or 2 students that have not passed the MCAS test, and these are because the students can learn a little trade or a little work, but they are not capable of passing the MCAS test. They just learn differently. Sure. But they learn with their hands, and others. We have students in our engineering department that are doing fabulous work. Yeah. About 25% of the children come from the town of Barnstable. That was the statistic when we opened, but they're all very competitive. We have Future Farmers of America, and they are outstanding students in all the work that they do. So there isn't a shop that isn't very special. They're all special shops. Well, I think the town has changed its form of government over the years, so that we've gone from the open town meeting with the Board of Selectmen to going to a town meeting more representative, and then we went to the town manager, so we have a real business person, which was very good. I think that was needed. I've heard the pros and cons of every single one of them. But it's always evolved, which I think is probably best for the town of Barnstable. Right now, are we going to change again? We've talked about other changes, but I don't see them coming right now. They seem to have settled down, and we have the right number of people in every precinct, and we went from 7 precincts to, correct me if I'm wrong, 13 precincts. So that shows the growth in the town. The village associations are still pretty strong. And they really get the meat and potatoes for everybody, what the village itself wants, to keep the village special. And every village is very special. And very interesting people in every village, and they're rightly so. They're there, and this is what they want. Well, I guess the beach is my favorite place, because I love to swim. But Douse's Beach is my beach. And then Joshua's Pond is my pond. And I was traveling in the Azores and met relatives of friends of mine here, and we looked at the beaches because we wanted to go swimming. And she picked us up, and we went by this lovely beach, and she said, no, we're going over here. I'm going to drop my grandson right here. She said, I said, oh, this is you. She said, this is my beach. And I said, well, you've got to come when you come to Fall River to visit Cousin Paula. You have to come to Douse's. That's my beach. So everybody has their own beach, and it's my beach. But you may come, Len. Yes, it has. It's their choice. They did choose to stay here. our son James took over our answering service business. And he has all the children and the grandchildren. I've got 2 great-grandchildren, and he's been involved in the Y and in our parish, so he's very busy doing those things. The boys are. They're into the karate, so if children get involved in the community and programs in the community, and their jobs continue in the community, that's fine. My daughters have gone, my 2 daughters, the oldest and the youngest daughter, are both working off Cape. You probably had Andrea.
I did.
Oh, I did. Better known as, well, we now call her Andrea. She's been very successful. She lives in Trenton, New Jersey, in a very old section of Trenton, but she commutes daily into the city. And she works for Church Insurance and has become very much involved in their health care and their benefits. So she rules the roost for that's actually the Episcopal Church. It was Church Insurance was started. So, you know, you can delete that, but yeah. And Antoinette is here, and she has a daughter who is at Cape Cod taking engineering, but her son is autistic. So she's gotten very much involved in all of the autism programs, both when he was in the Barnstable system and now that he's at the Collaborative and the Challenger Club, she's very much involved in that. And yes, she is the head of the pack. So that's what happens. But they've actually come about, we've talked about changes. Things have come up and I'll say, well, we discussed that back in the 80s and now we're looking at it in the 90s. All of the things we're still, just Main Street, how we've changed Main Street, we started that way back. And again, they're now talking about should we do one of the streets 2 ways or 1 way. These are conversations we have continuously. And so, like, I see Milton Penn and we say, oh my, here we go again. But that's the way new people come down. And they want to see so many of them have moved here. And then they want to see the town look like it did from the town they came from. And that's always been so. Public education. We ask everybody to pay for public education. Well, they said, well, I did it back in my town. Or I said, yeah, but the seniors in your town helped pay for public education back then. It's something that the way America has been set up, our towns are set up, it's everybody's responsibility to take care of the next generation. And they're the most important people. As we say at Cape Cod Tech, it's all about the children. We say it at the Y, it's all about the children. We have to raise our children properly, and it takes a town, a community to raise children. Ann M. Williams.